Hello everyone, my name is Adam Lageveen. I'm going to show you the basics today of flint napping. Now keep in mind this is the way I flint nap. I am self-taught. I do pick up on different videos and different nappers, and I will take some of their techniques and put them into play, but for the most part this is the way I do it. So I want to simply show you how I flint nap. So I'm going to start today with this piece of obsidian here. And this is kind of a spall. It's kind of already been knocked off a bigger piece. But I'm going to show you how I will thin this. These are kind of the stages. I'll go from this stage to more of this stage here, where we still have some thinning to do. The next stage would look something similar to this. And we would go on down to something like this. And then we'll go on to the pressure flaking. But first we're going to show the percussion. You can use hammer stones. This is a natural stone found in a creek. You can use those. You can see how I use the end pieces. Preferably I like copper. It's more of a modern tool. It just seems to work. It's just hard enough but just soft enough to grab that edge. This is a solid piece of copper. I will use that for percussion flaking. But today you can come on up here. I'm going to show you the tools I'm going to use. So this is my basic toolkit. There's nothing fancy about them. I make my own tools. This is a copper water cap filled with lead and just a simple dowel rod. I've used this one time and time again. I've actually just reused it. It is weighted with lead. The reason I like this, I like to make my own so I can adjust how heavy they are. I don't like mine real heavy. I work more on angles more so than weight. So you can see these are my simple tools here. This is the percussion tools that I'll use. These are my pressure flakers. They're simple, pre-drilled with soft copper. It's hard. It's been twisted. Some has been twisted. Some is just naturally it's a copper nail you can buy. Just set with set screws. Nothing fancy. On my abraders, I like two different types. I like a coarse and I like a fine. The coarse I'll use when I'm percussion flaking, and then the fine I'll use when I'm pressure flaking, and I'll show you how those are both used. This is something that's very key. I don't use it a lot, but you can see this is a bus bar out of breaker barks, and it is copper, and what I'll use it for is to shear my edge or to create my angles on my platforms, and I'll show you how that's demonstrated. A lot of people take just a copper tube and will hammer it flat. You can use it the same way. This is just one I found and repurposed. You always want a good file. That way you can keep your pressure flaker tips sharp. I don't like mine too sharp, but as I use them they dull. A lot of times I just simply will take my abrader and rough up the edges. But it is always good to have one. Always want leather. Leather is your friend. It's going to protect your clothing and your hands. I don't like big pieces of leather. When I start to percussion flake, I will use this. This is what will protect my leg. And I'll show you here in a second how that's used, but it's soft leather. It's very flexible and works well. And then when I do my pressure flaking, I don't like a big piece because I like the piece to feel comfortable in my hand. Keep a marker here if I want to show my platforms. I'll show you where my next hit will be. Always have safety glasses. It's a must. And I don't know if you can see or hear, I have a fan to the left of me here that's blowing the dust away from my face. So you always want good ventilation, and you don't want to be breathing the dust, the silica dust. And from here we'll get started. So I'm going to first start, I got my leather here mainly just to protect my pants, but it also keeps, obsidian's very sharp. It's 3 times sharper than a surgeon's scalpel. So it will cut you. And I really should be wearing gloves, but I like to be able to feel this stone. I've done it enough that it's more feel for me as much as it is sight. I have 2 band-aids I put here on my 2 large fingers. The reason I do so, when I'm napping, if I'm hitting here, those flakes are going to come free on the underside. And when they do, they tend to want to stick into your fingers. So I just simply put 2 band-aids on. That will sometimes help protect my fingers here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do before I start any percussion napping on this piece, I'm going to go around this piece in a braid. And what that does, it's going to dull any of these sharp edges. Okay, the sharp edges I don't want, because when I strike it with my percussion bopper, those edges want to crush. And if those edges crush, my flake won't release properly. So I want to make sure I dull my edges. And this is a thing, you see people abrade straight up and down. You'll see people abrade different ways. I always abrade away from me for two reasons. The flakes will go that way, and the dust. I'm not bringing the dust back towards me. So I will usually hold my breath and I will abrade. And you can see the shape of my abrader, how it's curved. I'll start here and abrade away. And what I'm doing, I'm abrading away. I'll do that until I get all my edges, and then I'll come back and I'll simply just about 4 times, but I'm not pushing down real hard. I just want to do it enough to get those sharp edges. So you'll watch here, and you'll see the dust coming off this. That's what I don't want to, I do not want to be breathing that dust. So here I'm simply raking those flakes away from me. And generally I like to do it opposite of the way I'm going to be napping. So if I'm going to be hitting this piece here, I want to abrade opposite of that. So you'll see here, all I'm doing is getting rid of my sharp edges. That also is good for when you're percussion flaking, like with my hand, since I'm not wearing a glove. When I'm holding it here, or if I'm hitting here, it's not cutting me. So it's got dual purposes. So once my edge is all good and ground, okay, I'll shake that off. I don't want anything here where I'm trying to get the pieces off your hand too. If you're outside or if you're hot and sweaty, these flakes will want to stick to your hands. So I always try to keep them good and dry. So okay, so where do we start next? This is the question I get all the time. Okay, where do I start this piece? So let's look at it. So the key to good percussion flaking is convexity. Okay, I want that lens shape. Okay, you can see here how I got a good ridge. Okay, my flakes, when you're flaking, they want to follow that convexity. Right here, I do not have good convexity. It dips down here. It's concave, right? So I got to be cautious of that, the concavity. Here I have good convexity. I have a pretty good ridge throughout. That's good to know. I like to have that. Now, another thing you got to keep in mind is the square edge. You got a mass. See, it's a lot thicker here than it is, say, here. Okay? So when I'm flaking this, I want to attack the mass first. This is, people say, where do you start? I always find a narrow entry. So like in this case, I will probably go ahead and start here and work towards this mass. Another thing you really want to keep in mind is very important is that your ends, the top and the bottom, stay thinner than the middle. By doing so, if you can attack your ends first, usually, it will help keep this middle from getting too thin and breaking right in half. I see that done a lot. Now that's something I always tell people, if you can, like in this case, definitely this end is going to be thicker. I'm not going to worry too much about going from end to end. I'm going to work my way here into the mass, and I'll talk our way through that one. But keep in mind, always keep this middle thicker than the ends. Okay? So let's get started. I'm going to keep my abrader handy. I want it right here, and what I'll do, a lot of times when I nap, I don't like a back chair. I'm sitting on the edge of a chair with no arms. I want to keep my work area is right here between my legs. Okay? Now you can use your legs to rest, but you can get lazy by doing that. So, and a lot of people will nap on their leg. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually really good. It's keeping your angles right. Me personally, I was self-taught to do it in my hand, resting on my leg. This way I can control my angles. So if I want a steeper flake, I can raise that edge or lower it. That's just me personally. But keep in mind, you'll see people working on their legs. There's nothing wrong with that. You do it the same way. I simply like to do it in my hand. So I've abraded my edges. I went all the way around. I've dulled my edges. So now I'll go to my bigger bopper. Okay? I believe this is a 1-inch bopper. And I don't have a lot of lead in here. Now keep in mind, I'm using obsidian. Obsidian flakes easier than, say, chert. Okay? So if it was chert, I might have this weighted a little more. Okay? Actually, bone or antler works really good on obsidian, but I like, personally, copper. It's cheap, it lasts a long time, and if this gets wore out, I can hammer it down back into shape. Okay, so again, I like to start where there's a narrow entry, so a narrow place that I'm not putting a lot of stress on this point. Okay, so I'm going to start here. Keep in mind, I'm supporting this preform on my leg, and I'm using my index finger to support the tip. That's very important. If you're using a big piece, you can support it with your body, but the thing is, I don't want to create a lot of vibration in this piece. I want to keep the vibration down, okay? So here I'm going to go ahead and start in on my narrow spot here, just simply flaking down, okay? I'm going to abrade, and all I did is created a flake here, created a platform now I can hit here. Now, I'm going to flip this piece. So my next hit will be right here and straight down. I'm not trying to drive my flakes in. All I'm trying to do is create convexity and set up my platforms. And I'm going to do this all the way around this piece. Striking just straight down so that my angles are steep, but they're not creating flat flakes yet. And be sure to flake that off every so often. So I'm just going to go around this piece, and I'm hitting this piece. I actually use this edge right here. I'm hitting this piece and I'm driving that flake down, but I'm just doing it straight down. You can see how that flake releases. And then I'll just keep going around this piece. And I'll hit once and flip. And then I'm hitting right here on this point. That's my platform sitting right there, okay? And you'll see them flakes flying off. Again, I braid away from you, okay? You can see here how I've highlighted that area. Now I'll flip this. So you can see this will be my next striking point right here. And the reason that's important is this piece has convexity, okay? There's also an imaginary center line. If I could draw a line right down the middle of this piece, there's an imaginary center line. Anything this side or this side of that center line is safe to hit. In this case, my center line would be here, okay? This piece is that side of the center line, so it's safe to hit. Again, I can hit it here on my leg like this, or I can do it in my hand. But keep in mind my finger here, okay, needs to support that. You can see how far that flake traveled, okay? It really wasn't trying to get it that far, but that's what happened. That's okay. So again, dull my edges. I don't want any sharp edges, okay? And I'll come right here, supporting this end. My next hit is right here. Is it safe? Yes, because I have convexity. See my convexity? So here I'm going to hit, and it followed that flake. Now, I've got this piece sticking out here. I'm just simply going to dull that edge a little bit. I don't want any protruding sharp edges. And again, I'm not worried about driving my flakes just yet. I'm going to go around this whole piece, getting rid of this square edge, and I want it to kind of look like this. So here I go. I'm going to keep going around the tip here. Again, I'm supporting the back of this. I am going to use my leg at this one. But here I don't want to hit it a lot of times. I simply just want to create my next platform. So here I'm supporting it in my palm. My next hit's going to be right here. Okay? And again, I don't want to drive that flake all the way in. I can. I don't need to just yet. All I want to do is get rid of the square edge and the mass. That's about as far as I wanted to take that piece. So again, I'm going to braid away. Now my next hit is right there. I'm hitting it right on that edge and just straight down. And I'm not worried about what I'm going to make yet. A lot of people says, well, how do you know what you're going to make? I'll let the stone tell me what it's going to do. Okay? I'll know at that point when I get there. So my next hit, see I have convexity here, I have mass, so I'm going to hit this edge right here, in and down. Again, I'm going to braid, I don't want any edges there. Okay, my next hit's going to be right here, right on that point, just straight down, but make sure you're following through. A lot of people don't follow through with their boppers. They short whack it, and you don't need to do that. So my next move here is going to be right here again, and you can move this piece however it's most comfortable. I like to just keep mine about this angle right here, and I'll hit that edge. Now, keep in mind you can reuse these flakes, but I'm trying to get the most out of this piece as I can. I want to keep it So you can see here it's starting to kind of take shape, but I'm not worried about my getting this piece too thin yet. I'm just getting rid of this square edge. These little short flakes I take do nothing but help strengthen my edge. So here we are looking. If you had that imaginary center line, everything this side I can hit. Okay, but I'm not worried about that yet. So my next move is here. I'm going to take that flake there. Okay, so there. Again, braid, doing it away from me. So now my next move is going to be to hit this little point right here. And when I'm hitting and driving it down. You can see how that piece released. That's all I'm trying to do. And we call this zigzagging the edge, okay? Because I hit one side, and then I'm flipping it and hitting the next edge. And that creates a zigzag pattern on your edge. So now you can see we pretty much have a preform, I'm sorry. But we notice I've got these different angles here, and I'm not worried about that yet. My goal was to get rid of that square edge. I have no square edge. Now all the way around that piece is pretty. Now again, I want those edges dull. Okay, I'm just going down them. And what I'm going to do here is show you. So then people say, well, where do you go to next? Remember, we've got to keep the middle as thick as we can. So let's work on these ends. All right, we're going to work on these ends. And anything, there's imaginary center line, anything that side or this side of that center line we can hit. Okay? But again, let's attack the mass. Okay? Where is it thicker? All right? This end is not as thick as this end. So I'm going to start with this end. Okay? Again, I braid. Now what I'm going to do here is abrade my high spots so that you can see. This is not necessary, but this is what I do for teaching. So you can see these are my ridges. Everywhere it's highlighted are ridges. And these ridges are where I'm going to strike here, and my flake should travel and release in a shapes like this. So if you're ever hunting for arrowheads and you find these small flakes, you know that's where they were processing and making stone tools. Again, these kind of serve as highlighters for where I'm going to hit. Okay? And again, everything is this side of that center line. Same with here. Okay? If I had a center line, if I drew a line right down the center of this platform is this side of the center line. So I've abraded, got them good and abraded here. Now, this is the moment. Okay, if I'm striking here on this platform here, okay, same concept. I'm striking, I'm percussion flaking in and down, and I'm following through. So I'm using my arm against my leg to support this. I don't want a lot of vibration. Again, this finger can be here, okay, and I have mass. I'm avoiding this middle as much as possible. I'm going to start here and work my way into this tip. So here we go. My next hit will be right here on this point, driving that flake in and down. So there it released. And you'll see, if I can hold it all together, how much was removed. And what it did, it followed that convexity all the way over. Okay? And that's what I wanted it to do. I didn't want to get too deep into the middle, but I wanted it to follow into that mass. So my next hit will be right here where I drew. Okay? And it should go all the way into the mass here. So my next hit will be right on this point. Again, supporting that tip. I like to put my fingers underneath that. That's why I have these band-aids. You can see that. That helps when that flake releases. These little shards aren't sticking into my fingers. So again, I'm supporting that on my leg. Got my tip supported. And I'm using my leg here. I'm going to strike in and down right here. That was a good hit. It's a silent release. But you can see how much mass was taken out by that one point. Now, keep in mind, I could save that flake and make a bird point or an arrow point out of that. Okay? So, looking back here at this piece, you can see where it released. Now, My next hit will be right here on this ridge. On this point, it'll follow it should follow the mass, the convexity, and terminate into this edge right here. So again, I'm supporting the rock against my leg. Okay, got my fingers kind of underneath here. All right, and my next hit's going to be right on this point. Hit in and down and drive that flake. Let's see how it came off. Perfect. It was this side of the center line, so it was able to come off. Okay, so there. So I've got all this mass off now, and I'm not fighting a lot of hinges or strange angles. So again, I'm going to keep going around this piece. I'm actually going to hit here now and work this side just to work on that mass while I can. Why? Because it's this side of that center line. So I'm going to go ahead and hit strike there. So I'm going to strike here and then work my way back to that. I'm going to work where I have the most mass. It's a little thicker here than it is there. So I'm going to strike here, in and down. Again, that piece is supported on my leg. I've got the vibration deadened by this finger here. You can see here how that released. It went all the way across. Okay, that's good. Again, dull that edge so if I miss, I'm not scraping my knuckle on there. So my next hit's going to actually be, I'm going to skip here. I'm going to go on just to that tip. Now I don't want to hit this hard, and I want to hit it kind of flat. I want my flake to just run just far enough that it stops about right there. So let's see what happens. Perfect. Actually, it went a little farther, but we'll take it. So that got rid of that ridge here. I don't have that mass. So I'm going to dull my edge. Okay. So we got that piece. That was the troublesome area, right? That was the thicker part of that piece. Now we kind of got a dumpy back end here. We need to work on that. But I'm still going to work this up to about right here and get this mass down. I'm going to leave the middle like it is, and then I'll come back around on this back side and work. So we're going to come back to right here. Our last strike was on this tip. So we're looking now, if you're looking down that piece, you can see this platform is way out to that side. Okay, center line's here. That piece is safe to strike because it's out this side of the center line, plus I got mass and convexity. So I'm supporting that tip, got my arm rested here. This arm is free. I don't want this arm on this leg, and I'm striking in and down. Right there, okay. Now I'll zigzag, I'm going to hit this edge. Okay. Flakes are just wanting to come off, which is good, but you got to be careful. Don't try to jump ahead. So I'm pretty happy with this edge here. My mass is still in the middle, and I could still take more here, but I'm going to work on the thicker pieces. So I'm going to come on around here. Notice how this thickness here is about my desired thickness. Looks good, looks good, looks good. We get a little thick right here. Okay, you can see the thickness, which is good because I have convexity. Okay, if that was too flat, I couldn't do much with it. So I'm going to abrade my ridges, and again, not necessary, but it's a great teaching tool. And what that does, that shows you where the mass is. And again, when you abrade, you want to leave that dust on there. That dust helps your bopper grab that flake. So a lot of people don't wipe that off. Leave it on there. Okay. So again, looking down this preform, all my mass is to that side. Okay, my ridges are to this side, the convexity is here. All right, I'm safe to hit there. Again, I don't want to work too much in the middle. I'm going to go from this platform over to this platform. So I'm striking right there on the edge, and I'm following through. You can see how much of a flake released. Perfect. It went all the way and terminated without any hinging. That's good. That's what I wanted. Now, you can see I kind of got a little thin in the middle, so I want to avoid hitting here. So I'm going to work on this tip and get these two ridges down, and then I'll come back to this one. So again, I'm looking right here at hitting right on that tip and following that convexity, which it did. And come on over to that. And here I'm just going to dull that edge a little. And that all I want to do is dull that edge so that it doesn't cut me. So now, looking happy, happy, happy. I want to leave it a little thick here. I'm going to start working on this the mass here and work it on into this. So my next hit is not in the middle, it's going to be right here. So again, you can see that's pretty abraded. I've got convexity for that flake to follow. I'm hitting in and down. Terminated well. Now, this is what we call an isolated platform. Some people do this intentionally. I don't worry too much about setting up my platforms that way. I kind of just let the stone naturally do what it needs to do. Now, but this is isolated by these two last strikes I hit. So I can hit this right here and it should release fine without any, that it did. Notice how thin. I don't want to drive off real deep flakes. Just take your time working on that. So again, looking at this, you have your center line. I got flakes this side and this side I can work. Now again, I don't want to get my middle too thin, but I do want to thin that down. So I'm going to follow this ridge here, and notice that ridge goes at this angle, not across the piece. So I'm going to hit kind of at that angle. I'm going to move my platform, my preform, so that when I hit here, it drives that flake kind of that way. You can see here how that terminated. Notice my flake went at an angle and still released. So that, see how that's looking pretty good and flat. I still have convexity, but I'm getting rid of these high spots. That was a good hit. Out of that. Okay, so looking at this piece, looking pretty good. Still got some mass here on that side I can work. Still got a little mass on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and hit here and work some more of this, leaving the middle alone, but I'm working, driving some flakes across to thin that a little bit. Okay, now, happy with that. Got a little bit of a hinge. You can take your nail and pop them hinges off. Okay, so now, pretty happy. I want, there's a desired thickness I'm going for here. And I'm looking now, most of my mass is gone. I've got a few spots here I'm going to work on the back end. Again, I want to get my ends thin, my ends thin, and keep the mass in the middle. So I'm going to work this back end here and follow those ridges. And again, here it gets kind of tricky. So I'm going to work this one down. I'm going to flip it. Kind of got an isolated platform there. I'll abrade it and highlight it for you. There's my next hit. I've got convexity, but notice how my convexity runs out here. I'm going to hit this shallow. I'm not going to hit it real hard. So again, flip it over, support that tip. I hit it just hard enough for those flakes to terminate and stop right there. Again, going around this piece, I'm hitting that. I got this piece right up against that, and I'm just hitting that edge. I don't want my flakes to travel. All I'm doing here is setting up convexity and platforms. So notice here, I've got good convexity, but I don't want to run those flakes real far. So I'm going to abrade them, and for you I'm going to highlight them there so you can see my high spots. I got a ridge here and a ridge here. This one should terminate in and get some of this mass. This one I'm going to skip. I want to go ahead and hit this one, and then I'll isolate that one. So again, I'm supporting it, and you can do it on the inside of your leg or however you prefer. There, it went exactly what I wanted it to do. It stopped right here. So my next hit will be this one. You can see that flake did the same thing. Starting to hinge a little bit here, but we should be able to pick that up in a second. So again, I'm getting a good preform going here. Again, now I'll keep attacking that mass. Again, I want to keep my edges all dull, abrading away from me. Still got some mass here I'm going to work on. And I'm pretty pleased with that. So I got a little, now I'm going to come back to the mass I have here. Still got convexity here, still got some mass and some good angles. Now, you can see here, so I'm going to start at the tip and work my way to the mass. Just hitting those angles, and they should go all the way across and terminate, which they're doing so. And again, I'll braid away, and then just kind of come down the piece. And you'll see here I still have mass. I'm getting a little thin in the middle. I got to be careful. But I've got this mass here and this mass here I can still keep taking to this side. So I'm going to keep working on that. Yeah, the flakes terminated there. Now that's kind of isolated this mass here. So I'm going to hit here and hit here. Actually, I'm going to come on over to the middle and hit that first. And you'll see how it went all the way across. Hit there. Now I'm not hitting this very hard because I don't want the flakes to travel very far, because I know I'm losing my convexity there, my mass. So keep following those ridges. And here I need to be abrading. See how I'm getting my sharp edges? I need to go back to my abrader. So again, still attacking that mass. You can see here, if I had a center line, everything's kind of that side of the center line. But I don't have good convexity. It's getting kind of flat. So I can still hit those flakes, but I'm not trying to run my flakes very far. So again, I'm supporting that tip. And I'm going to follow this continuous platform all the way over. Notice how they're starting to kind of hinge here. That's going to happen, but I should be able to get them on that back side. The reason that's doing that is because I don't have the convexity I hope for. That's okay, because I'll be able to, when I lose some of this edge, I'll be able to come back to that other side. So again, I'm abrading away. Okay. Now, here's something I wanted to show you guys. So if you get to this point, okay, this is that bus bar I said. We're going to shear this edge. My edge is kind of more to this side here. However, I don't have good convexity, so I don't really want to take my flakes anymore that way. Okay, so there's two ways of doing this. You can shear this edge. Okay, I can take this and I'm starting up top and I'm putting a lot of force down and shear that edge. Or you can take a smaller bopper, percussion bopper, and just tap this edge. Now, when you do that, you want this piece up against the leather so that you don't get your flakes to travel. I just want those, I'm just biting off little bitty flakes, and I want to keep that angle. I don't want to run my flakes into that piece. And just keep turning that edge. So I actually want a sharp edge. You can still see my sharp edge now. Again, I'm abrading away. And what that does, that's creating convexity, but I'm taking my edge and I'm raising it. By raising my edge, I'm getting it closer to the convexity to the mass on this side. So now I could take this, I'll show you, and I will shear. Well, I've already abraded, so let me take a little more. So this is what I call sacrificing the edge. You're going to sacrifice the shape of this piece, but it's important that I do that so that I can make the piece do what I want it to do. So again, you can take this, I'm just crunching that edge off. Okay. Now, it does kind of booger up this side, but I'll fix that in a minute. What I'm wanting to do is get closer to this mass, and I did. By hitting here, I raised this edge up here, and now I'm back into my mass and convexity here. So I'll put this stuff back. Now I'm going to switch to because this piece is pretty thin, I'm switching to a smaller bopper. Okay, I don't want my flakes to be as big or as aggressive, so I'm going to put the heavier bopper up at this point. So it's just a matter of what you're more comfortable with. Some people will stay with that bopper. I have more controlled hits with this smaller one. So here again, I raise my edge to get closer to this mass. Now keep in mind, I don't have good convexity here. So these are going to be shallow flakes to get rid of this mass. And by doing so, once I get rid of this edge, I'll sacrifice some of this to get back over that next edge. So here I'm just going to take shallow flakes. I just want to keep my convexity going. Here I'm just zigzagging. Now, it's important that I look, okay, so I've still got my mass here. Still got mass here. So I'm just attacking the mass, and now I'm driving the flakes more in
and towards the center. If I'm not happy with my edge, again, I can use my shearing tool, or I can use this bopper here and basically shear that edge. So I'm going to do that here because I have kind of got a hinge right on the center line here, and I want to come from this edge and then work in from the other side. So I'm going to sacrifice some of this edge here. I've got this piece flat on the ground on the preform, and I'm sacrificing that edge. Okay, abrading away, and then highlight so I can see where my ridges are that I can hit and make the flake follow. So now, again, hitting these high spots, seeing where I have convexity, letting that flake follow. And so I'm actually thinning the piece now where I have convexity. Okay, so I'm happy there. So now I can sacrifice some of this edge to get up and over this mass here. It's hard to see, but you can see those are my high spots on this piece. That's my high spot. That's the troublesome areas I want to get rid of to keep to get this piece thinner. So I'm going to sacrifice some of this edge here. I got this piece right up against and I'm just biting off little flakes because I want to get as close to that mass as I can so that I can get up and over it. So here I can now attack this. And so I'm going to be hitting these edges here, blending it in to the middle line here. Just shallow flakes. I'm not trying to run them real deep. You can see them terminating off. I'm going to skip the middle here and go to this mass. You can see how it terminates to the middle. Now this side, this point here is this side of the center line. So I'm going to flip it and take that off first. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I've got my convexity in the middle, so it's safe to hit that. So at this point, you can see I'm pretty happy. I've got most of my mass off. My flakes have all terminated pretty well. Again, I'm going to go around this piece, abrade. I don't want any sharp edges. Okay, and then I'll come back and I'll look and see where I need to attack the high spots. So right there is what we call our biface preform, and at this point is where you can continue to take it down to make it thinner. This piece, if you want to say a big knife blade, I want it thin. I want my edges pretty thin so I can make them sharp with my pressure flaker. So here I'm going to continue working from the tip to the base, or vice versa, base to tip. I want to keep my mass in the middle, so I'm going to start here at the base. The base is tricky. This is where a lot of people break points right in the middle. That's why it's important to keep that mass, but to support these pieces is very important. One, I watched an Napper do this, and I really like this technique, but it's important that this piece is in my hand. Okay, I'm supporting that whole piece on the side and in my hand, but I got this piece flat against the side. All I got to do is hit basically my leg and the piece at the same time, and it runs a shallow, almost a flute. But that's one way you can thin that base without putting a lot of vibration and breaking it. It's kind of it takes some time to develop this technique, but once you do so, you'll really be happy with it. So there, I pretty much got that base, and it's important that that's thin because if I was going to half this onto a knife handle, right, I want that base fairly thin. So I'm going to stop with there. Very happy with that. There's to look at how much thinner that is and say that. So now I'll keep coming on around this piece and working where I have convexity. So again, hitting those high spots, you can see how I've kind of got them highlighted. Okay, I got my base here. Now I'm going to work on the tip a little bit. Then I'll come to the middle. So you can see I've got a, now this is a good platform, but I don't have a long ways for that to run. So I'm going to hit that very light. Okay, now I'm going to go to this next platform here. And I only want them to run about halfway. I don't want to run all the way across, because then you get what's called an overshot. So here, just getting rid of those sharp edges. Again, because I have mass on the tip, I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm not driving those flakes real far. There, I need to support that more. You can hear that. There we go. Be careful on the tip and on that base. That's where you get a lot of breakage. There, I'm just doling that edge a little bit. So now you can see my base, the bottom and the tip are thinner than the middle. That's what I'm going for. I want to keep as much mass in the middle as I can. So I'm flipping to the other side, and I'm going to do it the same way. Working those ridges, those high spots. Come to the base here. Let those flakes terminate to the middle. Went ahead and did that. So there, you can see at this point, very happy. Everything terminates to this midline here, where it's a little bit thicker. Here I got the same thing. I've left this mass to terminate to here, but on that side I'm pretty happy. I'm still going to take a little more. This is where a lot of people get scared, and you have the right to do so. This is where you get a lot of breakage. They're scared to take it down the next. They're scared to hit it one more time on that edge. But if you want a good thin piece, this is what you have to do. And this is where you're going to break a lot in learning to do so. But as long as you support that piece, you leave that convexity in the middle, you leave convexity, good ridges for those flakes to travel, generally you're pretty safe. So I'm going to do that here. And I'm just going to follow this continuous platform, hitting those angles to terminate those flakes in. So starting here, I'm going to skip over, I'm hitting here next, in and towards that midline, there. And notice how everything's terminating right to the middle. That's what I wanted it to do. Now, yes, my edge is getting very thin here, but I hate pressure flaking. So if you hate pressure flaking like me, you're going to get better at percussion flaking. Again, I can highlight and show you where I still have some mass. Now, that edge is getting very thin, so I got to be careful. Now, I'm going to sacrifice some of this edge, and this does two things. It raises my edge, but it also creates a straight line, what's known as a continuous platform or your blade edge. So here, I can now hit, you can see I have convexity for that the flakes to travel. So the same concept. Striking in and down to that midline. Making sure my flakes all terminate. Hitting my mass. So at this point here, sacrifice. This is getting very thin. At this point, you could start pressure flaking. Again, I'm going to continue to thin until I'm happy with the edge. So in this case, it'd be a knife blade, and you could set it up to notch it to make it a different point or whatever you choose to do. I'm just going for a good thin knife blade. And notice how much we've lost. We've lost a lot, and we've sacrificed a lot of rock in order to get to this point. But I'm happy. Happy so far. Let's see if we can keep it that way. Again, working that mass on the tip. I want to keep my mass in the middle if I can. So because I still have some mass here at the base, I'm going to work it and work into the middle. Again, I'm just catching that edge with my flaker, my percussion bopper, and driving those flakes to the middle. like that. So, pretty thin piece. Notice all these little flakes. Get rid of them. They start to become little boogers. They'll start finding little crevices and cracks in your hand, and they will make for trouble. So, at this point, very pleased. Got a few little small hinges, nothing major. I can continue, like in this case, if I want to get that mass off, I'm going to raise my edge again, sacrifice some of the edge. Notice my piece isn't near as big as it was, but that's part of the game if you want to get a piece that you're really happy with. So at this point I have a little bit of convexity, not a lot. So I've raised my edge to this side so that if I had a center line, all my flakes, all my ridges are that side, platforms are that side. So here I'm going to hit and drive that flake in. And what I should have done is got rid of that mass, and I did. And again, I can continue to follow that continuous platform. I'm hitting those flakes very shallow. I don't want them to go any further but the middle. Now, what that did was gave me a very flat piece, which is fine. If you look at most blades, there's usually a flat side and there's a side that still has convexity. That's good for if you're when you go to resharpen those pieces. Now I still have mass on this base, so I'm going to work that. Notice how my edge is this side of that platform, or the center line. So I'm going to go ahead and hit these, supporting that tip still the same. I don't want any vibration in that piece, especially this thin, it's going to break. So again, just leave those, don't worry. I still have a little bit of mass in my base. Now, this is, you can really break a piece, and I'm probably pushing the limit by doing so. But what I'm doing here, I'm raising that edge to get closer to that mass. Notice how I've got kind of a cup shape right here. That's what I wanted to do. Now, I'm going to use that same technique I showed you here, but keep in mind, this piece is in my hand. I'm going to go ahead and dull those sharp edges so it don't cut me. But I've got this piece pushed into my hand, okay? And again, that's flat, not the tip, but the base is flat against that piece. And I'm hitting the pad and my leg at the same time, driving them flakes in. This is almost what you call, some people call fluting, but it's really more thinning flakes. A lot of your older pieces or knife blades are thin this way. Now, I'm very happy with that. So you can see there, I pretty much have a almost finished blade. Okay, at this point I've done about all the percussion flaking I want to do. I've got the edges all like I want it. I can still continue to strike some of these platforms and turn my edge or get a sharper edge. Not necessarily, I don't really have to do that, but I'm kind of a perfectionist, and I like my pieces to be good and thin. Why? Because I don't like to percussion flake or pressure flake. But again, don't be scared to push the limit. That's where a lot of people, they fall short on getting those pieces good and thin because they're scared to take it another notch and continue to thin. And again, you get more breakage that way, but if you want a piece that, again, you're happy with, I recommend it. And again, here I'm just getting some of my high spots out. So there. Okay. Again, I'm holding that piece very still. I don't want a lot of vibration in that piece. Now, at this point is where you would start pressure flaking. And pressure flaking, if you've created the right convexity, like if this was a knife form, say, I really don't even have to do much pressure flaking on this. I could essentially use this edge just like it is as a knife. Okay. Now, as that piece got dulled, I would then have to, as the piece got dull, that's when I would have to start using the pressure flaker. And I'm just going to show you how I would pressure flake. I'm not going to go into all that. That's a whole nother video. But basically, imagine if I was cutting with this piece, okay, you can see where the edges is getting dull. So this is a stimulation, not stimulation, but basically a example of if I was cutting with that, it's going to get dull on that edge, right? If I'm cutting, it's going to get dull. Now, when it goes to pressure flaking, I don't like, some people like hand pads, some people like different things. I like just a piece of flexible leather. Why? Because it flexes and bends to my hand. Now, just like when I'm percussion flaking, right, I could hit these high spots. When I pressure flake, it's the same concept. I have good convexity to that center line on this piece. So I'm very happy with that. So now all I have to do is follow these ridges. And the way I pressure flake, I keep this piece here between my fingers, my thumbs here supporting kind of the tip. I put this piece between my legs. I make sure my feet are on the ground and this piece is between my legs. Now, this is where a lot of people go wrong. Let your legs do the work. Okay? Yes, I'm putting a lot of pressure here. I've got my copper tip on that platform that I'm going to strike. Okay? Yes, you build up pressure with your hands and then you bring your legs in and you'll pop that flake. Okay? A lot of people don't. This is a hard technique to get down. You got to see people do it and you just got to do it enough to where you practice it, you'll feel it. I can tell when I get a good flake just by, so again, building the pressure up with my hands, I start to bring my legs in and I pop that flake. Again, just following my ridges. And all this is going to do is continue to thin my piece. You can see I'm still driving flakes halfway across. So, but the key is to get that edge good and thin first. And if you notice how that's slipping, that tells me my piece needs to be abraded more. This is where I like to use my finer abrading stone. It's not as aggressive and it creates a little more dust. It creates a little more dust and helps my pressure flaker grab. So again, just building up pressure, popping them flakes, running them flakes in. And again, you can do this, and I'm getting little hinges there, but they're not going to be noticeable once I pop them off. But I'm continuing to thin that piece. But it's not always necessary. I like to percussion flake enough that all I got to do is come hit these high spots, and I've got a finished point. Because I hate doing this. It's hard on my hands. It's hard on my wrist. When you go to notch, it's the same way. Some people pressure flake on their leg like this. It's up to you. I'm again not going to go into too much of that. This is more of a percussion, a thinning, how to get your piece thin, but you can still continue to thin this piece here with your pressure flaker. Again, by pushing them flakes, and let your legs do the work. I'm building up pressure and I'm popping them flakes in. Again, I've switched to my finer piece, my finer abrader. I'm just working those high spots. Get rid of my little hinges. I'm just hitting everything this side of the center line. And that's pretty much it. That's where I would stop. Personally would stop. Another thing I like to show, it's kind of a little secret, but I don't mind sharing my secrets, is the flat edge of this abrader here. People don't realize you can straighten that edge up. You say, how do you get such straight lines? Let that flaker do the work, okay? Notice how my line got really straight there. Plus it'll highlight my next hit if I need to. So with that piece, but as you can see there, I'm very happy with that piece. There's nothing done other than We thinned it. We used tools I made myself. There's nothing fancy about it. You just need a lot of practice, a lot of time, a lot of practice. But these are the tips I use. Hopefully they help you. Again, there's a million ways to do it. This is just how I do it, and it seemed to have worked for me, so hopefully it'll work for you. Have a great day.